What is up, you guys? Thank you so much for being here with me. I see you, I appreciate you, and I hope you're happy and you have a smile on your face. And if that's the case, please help someone else and make their life just a little bit easier today. Porsche 986 motor mount replacement time. Motor mounts from PRG with the metal insert. These are gonna be soft urethane, better than the stock rubber, not as much NVH, that's noise, vibration, and harshness, as your stiff urethane bushings. This is mostly for daily driving my car, not for taking it to the track, but I'm sure it could handle a few track days if needed. I'm all about supporting small business, so let's give them a try. I'll show you how to install them. Let's try it out. Your jack, couple of jack stands, your chokes, ratchet, extensions, a 15mm socket. All the bolts are 15mm. Your 15mm wrench, you cannot get to some of them. E10 or hex 7. This is for the studs that attach the engine carrier to the chassis of the car. Flathead screwdriver. It's the easiest way to take the clamps off of the cooling hoses that are by your motor mount. WD-40 for when things get rough. Blue thread locker to keep your screwy boys from rattling loose. Gloves, because you want to keep your ladylike hands looking fresh. This because we're messy. And your torque wrench. Why am I touching it like this? Unless this is not your first rodeo and you know what 32 foot-pounds feels in your hand. Start by jacking up the car at the rear. Place your jack stands right on this spot. This is the rear tire right here, that's the front of the car. Just make sure you have your chokes placed securely. That was the first jacking point. This is the other jacking point. This is on the passenger side, just in case you didn't get a good look at it the first time. Here's a little bit of a pro tip. Once you have the car up in the air with the jack stands in place, I always shake it around to make sure it's not going to land on me by accident. Now the next step will be to hold the engine up. You don't need to jack the car up by the engine, that's very bad. This right here is going to be your oil pan. This is your oil filter. Jack it up from right here. Alright, so down here there's going to be 4 bolts that hold the engine carrier, and then the motor mount will be attached to this. The engine carrier and motor mount have to come out as a complete assembly. There's going to be 1 right here, then 2, 3 on that side. Let me see if I can shine a light at it. 3 right there, and then 4 all the way over here. Use your extension and your 15mm socket. Pro tip, reflect on life. Call your dad, fix that relationship. All right, number 3 over here. Okay, as you start undoing the last of these 4, I mean, you can already see here that there's separation. So just be very aware of what's going on with the engine. It is your safety after all. These bottom 2, you might have to maneuver the engine up or down, because the bolt is so long that goes in here that it'll actually hit right here. Well, I had a little snafu with the filming of this. Unfortunately, my camera decided to shut down on me and I was not able to get any of the footage of me removing the part from the car. But since everything is already taken apart, I'm gonna explain to you how everything goes back together. Then I'm gonna show you underneath the car where everything goes. This is what the motor mount assembly will look like when you first take it off of the car. This is an exploded view, so you can see where all the bolts go through. as you saw, this is gonna be your engine carrier. This is gonna be your motor mount bracket, and this is your actual motor mount. Now your motor mount and motor mount bracket are going to be held to the engine carrier via both of these bolts. These are 15 millimeters. So this is the motor mount, and this is gonna be pressed in here. You will need to press it out when you take it apart from the vehicle so you can install a new one. You could just purchase the bracket with the motor mount already pressed in if you're just doing an OEM swap. If you just get this and you are gonna press it into the old bracket, make sure that you press it in the right way. Make sure that you know where top is. You'll see a little mark here from the old one. Pretty self-explanatory how that right there would go here. The motor mount bracket is gonna be held on to the engine via 4 bolts. The top 2 have an opening. You don't have to take it all the way out. You can actually just loosen it enough and then it'll slide out. And I'll show you that on the car. These are the 2 that have that opening on the bracket, and they'll slide, both of them will slide right off. So that's why they're still in the car and they're just loose at the moment. The motor mount bracket with the motor mount insert actually goes in here. As you can see, you have that one, which is the one that just will slide on and off. Then you have 2 bolts, one that goes here and one that goes in here. They're both 15. The 2 that stay here in the engine are also 15 as well. Next, you're gonna have this piece, which is the engine carrier. Remember, the arrow will point to the front of the vehicle. Now, if you're doing this as I am and you don't take these off, it's gonna be a little bit more difficult to get it in and out, but trust me, I took it out without having to remove these. So it goes back in. Right now it's going back in super easy because the motor mount is not attached to this, but once you attach it, then it gets a little bit more tricky. Installation of the PRG mount should be pretty simple. You may or may not need some WD-40. Just a little bit there. And then just press it in by hand. By the way, the torque specs for all of these bolts, for these 2, and for these 4 is going to be the same. It's going to be 32 foot-pounds. When you take these bolts off right here, sometimes the entire stud will come off. Even if it doesn't, make sure to take them off completely. It'll give you a lot more room to maneuver when you're down there, and it'll make it a whole lot easier to get the assembly down and out of the car. Hex 7 or an E10, which is the star pattern. Past the 2 hoses. Honestly, that's the most difficult part of this whole process. I think it might make sense for you to take these off. Be aware that if you do that, you'll have to bleed the system again. Start by installing this one and this one over here. Then that one right there is going to be next to the motor mount. Tighten the other side, and then you can lift the engine so you can start putting these in. The next thing you're gonna do is you're gonna put these studs in. Now the easiest way to put them in before you even put the nut on is you're gonna lift the engine. That's going to lift your engine carrier, and you want to get it as close to the chassis as possible and line it up so that the stud goes into the hole. You're gonna use your Hex 7 or E10, I believe. to tighten that to 32 foot-pounds, and then you're gonna put the nut on after you're done, and you will be ready to lower your car.